Thanks to Shortform for sponsoring this video.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video I just want to share 10 biology books that I have enjoyed in the past or am currently reading at the moment in support of the Science Reading Challenge. For those who don't know what that is, it's a science reading event that I'm hosting throughout the rest of the year, so definitely go check it out. And then come back here. I'll leave the announcement up there and down below, but let's just go ahead and get started. So first up, we have David Quammen's The Tangled Tree, A Radical New History of Life. And David Quammen is a pretty prolific natural history writer. He's written on a bunch of somewhat even technical topics. There's this one, for example, and there is one on zoonotic diseases, which came out before COVID and everything, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, he's been recommended to me a lot from some of his other books, such as The Song of the Dodo. This book is all about the whole concept of horizontal gene transfer, which, for those who don't know what that is, evolutionary speaking, we inherit, our DNA and stuff from our ancestors and all that. Horizontal gene transfer is when bacteria and different organisms can pass genetic material through the same generation rather than through descendants. So that's really interesting, and actually a pretty significant portion of our DNA genome is actually probably derived from horizontal gene transfer, and the book goes into a lot of detail about that. So it's pretty crazy when you think about it that way. And a lot of different aspects of kind of big ideas of biology are discussed as well, such as the origin of the domains. Yeah, I remember when I was in school, we learned what King Philip came over for good spaghetti, and so in kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, class, genus, species. But yeah, we didn't really learn anything about domains, which are above kingdoms, and this is all about sort of the development too of between eukaryotes, archaea, and bacteria. So I thought that was really interesting, just because archaea and bacteria always kind of get like lumped together, even though there's actually quite a bit of difference between them. But yeah, you also learn about some of the newer technologies. Granted, I think this was in 2009. I want to say 2019. 2018. This is when CRISPR, which was just getting started about that time, I believe, and that's a genetic splicing tool. I can't remember exactly how it works, but this book and others go into it pretty detailed on how this program is a tool that allows you to kind of manipulate the genetic code of different organisms and kind of put different codes in different spots and everything to kind of edit it and change things up a little bit and everything like that. But yeah, just pretty technical stuff kind of going on, but just thoroughly enjoyable. The book I'm currently reading right now is part of a buddy read that I'm doing with 3 other people as part of the Science Reading Challenge, is The Gene by Siddhartha Mukherjee, and this has been fantastic so far. I think I'm about 30% of the way through, so we've learned a little bit about the history of the 1800s, kind of with Mendelian genetics, and kind of some of the horror stuff dealing with like eugenics and things, both in Europe and the United States, how when people were kind of understanding like heredity and everything, kind of like the horror show that turned out to be. But yeah, you also get a lot of family kind of vignettes from Mukherjee's family history, which he kind of goes into different inheritable mental health conditions and that sort of thing that his family has dealt with, and it just provides like a really cool human lens, and he writes so beautifully. You can see why he has won a Pulitzer Prize for one of his other works. It's the one on cancer. What's called The Emperor of All Maladies. But so far, my favorite takeaway has been how, even though people couldn't physically figure out what a gene was, they didn't really have a concept of DNA. They just realized that there has to be like genes or genetic material like in your body at some point, but they couldn't like physically comprehend like what that actually was. They just knew it as a kind of almost like as a theoretical or physical or philosophical concept. before they could actually, go into the idea of what genes actually are inside the cell, what DNA actually is inside the cell. So I found that really fascinating. I'm at the point now dealing with Rosalind Franklin as well as Watson and Crick, and they're in the process of discovering the actual like three-dimensional shape of DNA. So that's pretty cool, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a great history book and a great science book on a core biological concept. Next up, we got a Follow Society book, and it's my copy here of Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Now, before we go into too many details here on Silent Spring, I'd like to introduce you to today's sponsor of this video, which is Shortform. Now, I know a lot of you have probably heard of different book summary apps and that sort of thing, but let me tell you, Shortform is if I took some of those apps, dragged them to the gym, and made them lift some plates with me, because these aren't your average sort of 10-15 minute just book summary pages going on. So yeah, let's just go ahead and check it out.
So Shortform is a platform that has thousands of book summaries as well as their own independent articles. And I would almost call them more like book analyses than just book summaries, just because they are so in-depth. They have a catalog, I think, in the thousands so far, and they've been releasing new titles and new books each week. And now let's just go ahead and look at a few of the categories, and they have all the important ones, at least for me. As you can see, there's tons of them here, but they got history, philosophy, and science, which are definitely the big three for me, but lots of other stuff for other folks as well. Now let's just go ahead and look at a few of the ones that I've been looking at recently. You can see like Plato Symposium from my Philosophy Discord not too long ago, and here's something that might be coming up as a sneak peek for some future videos with the Structure of Scientific Revolutions with Thomas Kuhn. We've got Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, and The Gene by Siddhartha Mukherjee. And it's been really good just kind of going through their catalog, finding science and history books that I've already read in the past, kind of brushing up on things that I may have forgotten, kind of relearning all the salient points and things so I don't have to reread the entire book over again. But let's just go ahead and check it out. So over here with The Gene by Siddhartha Mukherjee, it's a buddy read that I'm currently in the midst of. But I've been using this just to kind of prepare myself, because it's been a long time since I've done any reading on like genetics or any coursework on that. So you start off with a summary, but it goes so much more further than that. As you can see, you just kind of keep going down, and there's just tons of information. And one thing I really love about Shortform is they add outside information that might not necessarily have been in the text of the book to kind of build up some context and explain different points. Some books almost have like a chapter by chapter analysis and summary, and then some books kind of have more just like a generic kind of really long analysis. But as you can see, it's kind of broken down into different parts and stuff like that. But I've been thoroughly enjoying it. For those who like audiobooks, you can listen to these analyses through audio format, as well as printing them off in PDF format, so you can physically write on some paper and stuff to take notes on your notes. So if that's your thing, you can do that as well. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. I've been doing a couple, like I said, I've been kind of alternating between brushing up on things I've already read, as well as using them to kind of prepare myself, just so I can feel like I get even more out of the ones that I am currently like reading at the moment. And I think it's kind of fun too, looking at some that I hadn't even really considered, just kind of learning new things that way as well. So they offer a risk-free trial period for 5 days, and you can also check out my link in the description below for an additional 20% off an annual subscription, which would give you just about half off for the whole year as compared to the month-to-month price point. Hope you check it out and enjoy it as much as I did.
So yeah, Rachel Carson Silent Spring really was almost like the catalyst, springboard, almost kind of like a moment for the environmental movement, and that was kind of going on a little bit in the late 50s and the early 60s, kind of to rally around. And this book is all about DDT and how different chemicals that different companies and people have used historically, how we don't really know how they always interact in the environment, especially like when you combine different things. A lot of these chemicals are studied in isolation not necessarily with interactions with each other. But yeah, this is a fairly actual technical book. I know a lot of people talk about it. There is a lot of numbers on a lot of chemistry and that sort of stuff is discussed. But like I said, it's just such a seminal, like kind of like watershed book that I feel like it definitely deserves to be read. If you want more of like Rachel Carson's like literary stuff, her Sea trilogy is also really, really highly regarded, and I encourage you to read pretty much anything by Rachel Carson. You can't go wrong. Next up, we got Sentient, What Animals Reveal About Our Senses by Jackie Higgins, and I'm lucky enough to have a signed copy that I received, I think 2 or 3 Christmases ago. This is all about, I read this one actually alongside Ed Yong's An Immense World, and they're kind of on the same topic, dealing with like animal senses. This one is a little bit more slanted towards kind of almost comparisons between human senses and animal senses. I just thought it was really well done. The prose is excellent, and I like how she goes into not just kind of our traditional senses, you know, with sight, touch, smell, that sort of thing. She goes into those, but also other ones such as like balance, or like perception of time and balance, or excuse me, pleasure and pain, different things like that. Plus, just like, first of all, look at that cover too. I meant to mention that like right at the beginning. Like I said, Ed Yong's Immense World probably is like the slightly better of the two as far as like scope and grand scheme of things, but I honestly think you should read both of them kind of like together and kind of get like kind of the 1-2 punch. Like I said, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up any of the Oxford Very Short Introductions. I've got a whole like stack of them over there, and I've read several on like different biological concepts. Let's see, I've done marine biology, mammals, reptiles, climate change, evolution, forests, probably a whole bunch of others that I'm just like drawing blanks on, like Earth system sciences, whole kinds of stuff like that. I found most of the biology ones to be like just really spot on. So like I said, check those out. I haven't brought them up quite a little bit, so I figured I would right there. Next up is a favorite author of mine, Carl Safina. This one is Becoming Wild, How Animal Cultures Raise Families, Create Beauty, and Achieve Peace. And this book is all about dealing with different animal kind of kinship groups and how the display culture throughout different generations and stuff. And as you see on here, the macaw is one of the groups, or excuse me, the not groups, one of the species that he writes about. And I enjoy how he gives each of the 3 species. The other one is, let's see, he talks about sperm whales and also chimpanzees, and each species of those 3 has about a third of the book. So I really enjoy how he usually incorporates a couple different groups or different species or different topics in his books, but he gives each of them plenty of space to kind of like be fleshed out, to go into plenty of depth. Like I said, I think this is probably like, yeah, it's about over 100 pages or so for each species, so thoroughly enjoy it. And it's all about, like I said, kind of how they display culture. And a theme of the book too is how humans, we as a species, have always kind of like tried to be like, you know, we do X, Y, and Z that no other species does, and that's what makes us special, unique, and stuff. And it's kind of breaking that down a little bit, because if you really look into it, a lot of X, Y, and Z are actually shown by other species as well. But Carl Safina, normally he writes on marine biology, like fisheries, different marine species and stuff. This is my first one I've read by him dealing with terrestrial stuff, and he doesn't lose any of his touch. So like I said, Carl Safina is one of my favorite authors. Definitely check him out. Another book that's actually in the short form platform is The Nature Fix, Why Nature Makes Us Happier, Healthier, and More Creative by Florence Williams. And this is one that I'm going to use short form to kind of go back through and just kind of data mine all the like really, really important stuff. I read this one a long time ago, but I'd like to like remember some of the stats and figures and stuff to add to my environmental kind of nature journal that I'm starting. And this is all about how nature actually makes you healthier. You know, it's definitely been a lot more popularized. I can't remember when this book itself actually came out. It was probably at the beginning of that kind of 2017. Yeah, this was when forest bathing started, you know, and traditionally in Japan, it's been around for a long time. But in the West, that was kind of, it wasn't much of a thing. But kind of dealing with all the scientific research of how being around plants, being around greenery, being around animals, all that kind of stuff, lowers your blood pressure, has different, physiological effects, both physically and mentally. It makes people healthier. I already already thought that was real, though I had never actually read anything specifically on the data behind it. It was more of an intuitive sort of thing, but just super highly enjoyable on that topic if you want to read more about it. And then we're going to cap things off with a whole slew of books on different kind of evolutionary topics, probably the core concept of biology here. We got Improbable Destinies, Fate, Chance, and the Future of Evolution by Jonathan Losos. I'm also reading a book right now called The Heart of the Wild that is a collection of essays that he and one other person have edited, though he also included, I think he included an essay on dingoes, if I remember correctly. So that's been interesting. And this book is all about convergent and divergent evolution. How, I guess, different species that aren't really that closely related converge on the same sort of natural selection, sort of applies similar pressures in different environments, even though they're not close or related or anything like that, and they end up developing very similar behaviors or structures or that sort of thing, kind of like anteaters and pangolins, not really closely related at all besides being mammals, but have a lot of the same sort of lifestyles and stuff. So I found that really interesting, and he does a lot of research on, he does write on a lot of his personal research, for example, dealing with anole geckos in the Caribbean Isles, and that sort of thing, and how he kind of goes about it. And I found that I always love when scientists include their personal studies, just because it's always interesting to me to learn about how do you actually study these different plants, these different animals, these different ecosystems, and what it's actually like to be out in the field with them. Yeah, I've read this a while ago and I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I have confirmation from some booktube friends that they also thought it's fantastic as well. So yeah, highly encourage you to check it out too. Next up we have Animal Weapons, The Evolution of Battle by Douglas Emlyn, and I honestly read this, I think the first couple of months I started BookTube way back in the day, and this book is all about how animals, why different pressures such as mostly sexual selection, different animals have developed just absolutely crazy, forms or behaviors, in the form of weapons to battle each other with. For example, stag beetles having the giant horns, Irish elk having the huge antlers, saber-tooth tigers with their teeth and everything like that. Why they have these kind of weird weapons and offensive modes and defensive tactics and stuff, and all the different pressures that kind of go into why, even if they're not that actual useful in quote unquote real life per se, different selective pressures kind of push on them to kind of go for those forms and everything like that. And I thought that was just really interesting and kind of just a fun take on an evolutionary principle. Next up, we have Darwin Comes to Town by Menno Schultz-Thuysen, and this is all about evolutionary pressures inside of urban areas. Humans have really changed the landscape quite literally, with a lot of different, even rural places as well, but urban, cityscapes, urban development, all that sort of stuff, effectively creates new niches and new environments for animals to either be pushed out of or try to thrive in. And this book is all about basically in different urban sites, different pressures that have been on these animals. For example, different birds, why they're able to thrive in cities. For example, they are learning to sing at different frequencies so they can be heard above car noises and car rumbling, just kind of the ambient noise of the cities. Getting up at different, being active at different times during the day due to all the light pressures. And just even just different behaviors. For example, some birds just hop, a lot of times they won't fly off the road. They started to hop, right? Just to kind of walk off the road rather than fly, largely because it just saves tons of energy. And it's something I've kind of thought about a little bit, but it doesn't. It's more like when it's forced upon me, just because I live in such a rural, in the middle of the woods kind of aspect. It takes me 3 hours just to even get to like a city per se. So it is just I read a book on green cities not too long ago, and I enjoyed that as well. So I always like kind of reading about stuff that I'm not really actively like always like around per se. But yeah, just kind of I found it really interesting. A lot of it too was about how a lot of generalist species can thrive in urban environments, but a lot of the more specialist ones, all their niches effectively like disappear due to urban development, so they have a rough time with things. And then lastly, we have Great Adaptations, Star-Nosed Moles, Electric Eels, and Other Tales of Evolution's Mysteries, solved by Kenneth Catania. And this is all about a couple of niche species on Star-Nosed Mole, electric eels. I think there's some kind of snake. I can't remember the snake species off the top of my head. But dealing with how they have such weird evolutionary, like adapted, like organs and behaviors and stuff. Like the star-nosed mole, you know, is like one of the fastest feeders on the planet due to its kind of like weird tentacle, you know, nose mouth appendage thing. So you kind of learn about how he actually caught a bunch, kind of his adventures in trying to get them, which was its own sort of ordeal. But then all the different kind of experiments like he worked with them on to kind of like determine like, you know, all the different senses, all the different abilities, and like how fast they actually were on a lot of different stuff. So I found that really interesting. You know, electric eels, you kind of learn all about them as well. So I found that really, really cool. I can't remember if he goes into the mantis shrimp as well. I want to say he did, but I don't quote me on that one. But this one was a lot of fun as well. I think I actually have a individual book review on that one, so I'll leave that up there as well for you guys to watch if that's your thing. So there you have it. There's 10 biology books I think you will enjoy. I know I did. Leave a comment down below if you have any biology book recommendations for me or for others to share and everything like that. And always remember, whether you're reading biology books or not, read victoriously.